At my aunt's retirement party, I said. I'll bring dessert to the family barbecue tomorrow. My nephew laughed. Oh, you weren't invited. My cousin smirked. It's kind of a close family thing. I just nodded, left without a word, and canceled the venue they forgot I paid for. I, 42M, stood in my aunt's living room, holding a glass of cheap wine and watching my family celebrate her retirement. The party was winding down, and I figured it was the perfect time to mention tomorrow's family barbecue that I'd been hearing whispers about all evening. I approached my cousin Sarah and her teenage son, who were huddled near the dessert table. I mentioned casually that I'd be happy to bring dessert to tomorrow's family gathering. The words barely left my mouth before my nephew burst into laughter. He told me, with that cruel teenage honesty, that I wasn't actually invited. Sarah's smirk confirmed what I already suspected. This was intentional. She explained, with fake sweetness dripping from her voice, that it was supposed to be a close family thing. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was standing in a room full of people I'd helped, supported, and celebrated with for decades. Yet somehow I didn't qualify as close family. I just nodded. No argument, no scene, no dramatic exit. I simply thanked my aunt for a lovely party, grabbed my jacket, and walked out into the cool evening air. The drive home gave me time to think, and by the time I pulled into my driveway, I knew exactly what I needed to do. The venue reservation was under my name. The deposit, the final payment, the insurance, all mine. I'd booked Riverside Park's pavilion 6 months ago when my aunt first mentioned wanting a big family celebration after her retirement party. Back then, Sarah had been all smiles and gratitude when I offered to handle the logistics and cover the costs. I pulled out my phone and called the park's event coordinator. I explained that I needed to cancel tomorrow's reservation due to a family emergency. She was understanding, though she mentioned the late notice meant I'd lose the deposit. I told her that was fine. Some things were worth more than money. The next morning, I went about my usual Saturday routine. Coffee, newspaper, a long walk around the neighborhood. My phone started buzzing around 10 a.m. Sarah was calling. I let it go to voicemail. Then my aunt called. Then my uncle. Then Sarah again. The messages were frantic. Sarah's first voicemail was confused. She'd arrived at the park to find the pavilion locked and a maintenance worker who knew nothing about any family event. Her second message was angry, demanding to know what had happened. My aunt's message was more diplomatic, asking if there had been some kind of mix-up with the reservation. I didn't return any of the calls immediately. Instead, I drove to my favorite diner and ordered a proper breakfast. The kind with eggs over easy, crispy bacon, and hash browns that actually had some color to them. I was halfway through my meal when my phone rang again. This time it was my Uncle Tom, my aunt's husband. He asked what had happened with the pavilion, his voice careful and measured. I explained calmly that I'd canceled the reservation after learning I wasn't invited to the event. There was a long pause before he asked why I would do such a thing. I reminded him that the reservation was in my name, paid for with my money, for an event I was apparently not welcome to attend. Tom tried to smooth things over, insisting that of course I was invited, that there must have been some misunderstanding. I told him I appreciated his attempt at diplomacy, but Sarah had been quite clear about it being a close family event. He asked what they were supposed to do now, with 30 people expecting a barbecue and no venue. I suggested they could always have it at Sarah's house, since she seemed to be running the show anyway. Tom's silence told me everything I needed to know about how realistic that option was. Sarah lived in a cramped townhouse with barely enough space for her own family, let alone 30 relatives. After hanging up, I finished my breakfast in peace. The diner was busy with the usual Saturday crowd, families with kids sticky from pancake syrup, elderly couples sharing the newspaper, construction workers grabbing quick meals between jobs. Normal people living normal lives, not dealing with family drama over barbecue invitations. My phone continued buzzing throughout the day, but I was selective about which calls I answered. When my elderly aunt called directly, I picked up. She was confused and hurt, asking why I'd canceled the party. I explained gently that I'd been told I wasn't invited, so I assumed they'd made other arrangements. She insisted that wasn't true, that I was always welcome at family events. I asked her to clarify that with Sarah, since Sarah seemed to have different ideas about who constituted close family. My aunt promised she would straighten everything out, but I told her not to worry about it. The damage was done, and I wasn't interested in being someone's charity invitation. Update 1. By Sunday evening, the family group chat was exploding. I'd muted it hours earlier, but curiosity got the better of me. Sarah was painting herself as the victim, claiming I'd sabotaged a family celebration over a simple misunderstanding. Several relatives were taking her side, calling my actions petty and vindictive, but others were asking questions. My cousin Mike wanted to know why I hadn't been invited in the first place. My aunt's sister was demanding to know who had decided to exclude me from a family event. The conversation was getting heated, with accusations flying in multiple directions. I decided to add some clarity to the situation. I posted a simple message explaining that I'd been happy to pay for and organize the venue for what I thought was a family celebration. When I learned it was actually a selective gathering that didn't include me, I'd simply canceled my contribution. I wished everyone well and hoped they'd found a suitable alternative location. The response was immediate. Sarah accused me of being manipulative and trying to control the family through money. I replied that I'd never tried to control anyone. I'd simply withdrawn my financial support when I learned I wasn't welcome to participate. If that was manipulative, then every person who'd ever declined to pay for a party they weren't invited to was guilty of the same thing. My Uncle Tom tried to play peacemaker, suggesting we all meet to discuss the situation like adults. I declined politely, explaining that there was nothing to discuss. The family had made their feelings clear, and I'd responded accordingly. I wasn't angry or hurt, just informed. Update 2. 3 weeks later, my aunt called to invite me to her actual retirement dinner. This was a smaller, more intimate affair at a nice restaurant downtown. She mentioned that she'd been thinking about the barbecue situation and realized how unfair it had been to me. I accepted the invitation graciously. The dinner was pleasant, good food, genuine conversation, and none of the underlying tension that had poisoned the retirement party. My aunt pulled me aside afterward to apologize for the confusion and hurt feelings. She explained that Sarah had been organizing the barbecue and had somehow gotten the idea that it should be limited to immediate family only. My aunt hadn't realized I'd been excluded until after the fact. She was embarrassed and sorry for the whole mess. I told her I appreciated the apology, but that the situation had actually been enlightening. It had shown me exactly where I stood with certain family members, and that knowledge was valuable. I wasn't holding grudges, but I also wasn't going to pretend that nothing had happened. The interesting thing was how the family dynamics had shifted since the barbecue incident. Sarah's attempt to exclude me had backfired spectacularly. Several relatives had been offended by her presumption in deciding who was and wasn't close family. Others had been put off by her victim act when the consequences of her decisions became clear. At family gatherings since then, I've noticed a distinct coolness towards Sarah from some quarters. My cousin Mike now makes a point of including me in conversations when she's around. My aunt's sister has become notably warmer toward me and notably cooler toward Sarah. The family politics had realigned, and not in Sarah's favor. Update 3. 6 months have passed since the barbecue that never was. The family has settled into a new normal, with clear lines drawn about who stands where. Sarah and I maintain polite but distant relations at family events. We're civil, but the easy familiarity we once shared is gone. The most significant change has been in how I approach family obligations. I'm more selective about what I offer to pay for or organize. When I do contribute to family events, I make sure the terms are clear up front. No more assumptions about inclusion or gratitude. My aunt has made several attempts to bridge the gap between Sarah and me, but I've gently discouraged these efforts. I'm not interested in forced reconciliation or awkward peacemaking dinners. The relationship is what it is now, cordial but cautious. The funny thing is, I'm actually happier with this arrangement. The old dynamic had me constantly trying to prove my worth through generosity, always being the one to pick up checks and organize events. Now I contribute when I want to, not because I feel obligated to earn my place at the family table. Sarah learned an expensive lesson about taking people for granted. The barbecue she'd envisioned as an exclusive family gathering ended up being a cramped affair in her backyard, with folding chairs borrowed from 3 different neighbors and grocery store potato salad instead of the catered spread that had been planned. More importantly, she learned that actions have consequences. You can't exclude someone from an event they're funding and expect them to smile and pay anyway. Family relationships, like any other relationships, require mutual respect and consideration. I still bring dessert to family gatherings when I'm actually invited, but I no longer assume my presence is wanted just because my wallet is welcome. It's a small but important distinction that has made family events much more enjoyable for me. The whole experience taught me that sometimes the best response to disrespect isn't confrontation or drama. It's simply withdrawing your support and letting people deal with the natural consequences of their choices. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all, and the most effective action is simply walking away.